Pay close attention to the neighborhood street in this footage. It was recorded in Spring, Texas, on the evening of August 12, 2025. This is 16-year-old Skye Meiler. At first glance, it looks like a normal walk down a quiet suburban block. But behind this moment is the beginning of a mystery. Just hours after she was last seen, Skye would vanish, sparking a statewide AmberAlert and a desperate search. And the key to understanding what happened lies in who she was talking to online. To understand her disappearance, we first need to understand her world. Skye Meiler was 16 years old, a high school student in Spring, Texas. Friends describe her as outgoing and bright, the kind of teenager who lit up a classroom with her energy. At home, she was just like any other girl her age, scrolling through her phone, listening to music, and talking about her future. Her neighborhood was quiet, suburban, and safe, a place where parents believed their children could walk freely. But even in the most ordinary settings, extraordinary dangers can find their way in. And for Skye, the threat would not come from her street, but from a screen. August 12, 2025. It was a warm summer evening in Spring, Texas. At around 7:30 p.m., 16-year-old Skye Meiler was last seen walking down Meerwoods Drive, a quiet residential street, not far from her home. Neighbors recall nothing unusual. A teenager in shorts and sneakers, heading out as the sun dipped behind the rooftops. A familiar sight in a suburban neighborhood where nothing ever seemed out of place. But this would be the last confirmed time anyone saw Skye. Investigators would later reconstruct her path using witness statements and camera footage. A map traces her movements, out of her driveway, past the corner stop sign, and toward the wooded stretch at the edge of her neighborhood. Then, the trail goes cold. A resident told officers they thought they saw her pause near the entrance to the subdivision, as if she was waiting for someone. Another mentioned a dark sedan idling nearby. Details were scattered, uncertain, but together they hinted at something more than an innocent evening walk. At 9 p.m. when Skye failed to return home, her family began to worry. Calls to her phone went unanswered. By 9:45, panic had set in. Just after 10 p.m. the first call reached authorities. The voice of a dispatcher cut through the silence. 16-year-old female reported missing. Last seen on Meerwoods Drive. Patrol cars rolled into the neighborhood. Officers canvassed door to door, knocking on homes, flashing lights illuminating streets that had always felt safe, until that night. Within hours, Skye's disappearance would escalate beyond a routine missing persons report. What began as a quiet evening walk in a Texas suburb had become the opening chapter of a statewide manhunt. In missing child investigations, time is the enemy. By midnight, it was clear that 16-year-old Skye Meiler wasn't just late coming home. She was gone. Investigators reviewed the criteria for issuing an AmberAlert, stringent rules meant to prevent false alarms. The child must be under 17. There must be evidence of abduction or imminent danger. And there must be enough descriptive detail to mobilize the public. Skye's case checked every box. A teenager, suddenly missing. Witness accounts of a dark car near the spot where she was last seen. And no trace of her since. At 2 a.m. the order went through. Skye's face lit up digital billboards across Texas highways. Phones buzzed with notifications. Her description, 5'8", brown hair, brown eyes, wearing a gray shirt and black shorts, became a broadcast repeated across the state. A spokesperson for Harris County Precinct 4 told us, when a child disappears under these circumstances, every second matters. The AmberAlert isn't just a warning, it's a lifeline. Within hours, local news stations were running continuous coverage. Anchors repeated her name, while scrolling tickers displayed her photo and the words "missing teenager." Social media amplified it even further, thousands of shares from people who had never heard of Spring, Texas until that night. But beneath the urgent mobilization, detectives were already chasing a lead that the public did not yet know. Digital communications suggested Skye may have been lured away, not by chance, but by someone she had been speaking to online. The AmberAlert cast a wide net, but investigators were already narrowing their focus. They weren't just looking for a missing teenager. They were looking for the person who might have taken her. It was a race against time, and every mile that car traveled put Skye further from home. When Skye vanished, investigators turned to the one place teenagers leave the clearest traces, online. On her devices, detectives found a string of digital conversations. The platform was Discord, a popular chat app with millions of users worldwide. To her family, it looked like a harmless outlet. To investigators, it became the first solid lead. Those messages pointed to a name, Nathaniel Young, 22 years old, living in Houston. What began as casual online exchanges had escalated into something more dangerous, an adult drawing a teenager into his world. A cybercrime analyst explains, grooming is calculated. They learn a child's interests, sympathize with their struggles, and slowly create dependence. By the time they suggest meeting, the child often feels like they know them. Discord's anonymity made it possible. No faces, no verified identities, just usernames and private servers, hidden in plain sight. The discovery changed the case. This was no longer just a runaway or a missing person. Investigators now believed Skye had been lured. And that raised a chilling question. How does a 16-year-old from a quiet street in Spring end up in the crosshairs of a man nearly a decade older? Graphics from child protection groups warn 1 in 5 minors say they've been approached online by an adult stranger. Skye's story was quickly becoming part of a much larger pattern. For law enforcement, the digital footprints pointed to a suspect. Now the hunt had a name, a face, and a target. The name uncovered through Skye's digital records was Nathaniel Young, 22 years old, living in Houston, Texas. Public records describe him as 5'10", about 140 pounds, with brown hair and blue eyes. At first glance, nothing about his appearance stands out, but online, his presence told a different story. Investigators traced multiple Discord accounts linked to his IP address, servers focused on gaming, but also private channels where younger users frequently gathered. The conversations with Skye suggested he had spent weeks, perhaps months, grooming her trust. Neighbors recalled seeing him around but described him as quiet, keeping mostly to himself. One acquaintance remembered him as the type who was always online, rarely seen outside except late at night. Another mentioned that he sometimes bragged about chatting with girls he met through apps, though no one thought much of it then. When reporters searched his background, no serious criminal record appeared. No convictions, no outstanding warrants. But there were signs of trouble. An old complaint about suspicious behavior at a local mall. A pattern of online activity that raised red flags to investigators only after Skye went missing. The portrait that emerged was not of a stranger lurking in the shadows, but of someone using the glow of a computer screen to make contact. And as one investigator noted, this wasn't just a stranger on the street. This was someone who allegedly built trust through a screen, and then used it to draw a child out of her home. With Young identified, the manhunt shifted gears. Detectives were no longer chasing shadows. They had a suspect, a vehicle, and the first real chance of finding Skye alive. With Nathaniel Young identified as a suspect, the focus shifted to finding Skye before time ran out. Harris County deputies launched a massive search operation, with Constable Mark Herman's office coordinating the effort. Maps pinned to briefing room walls marked every reported sighting, every possible lead. Roadblocks were set up along major exits out of Spring. Patrols extended north, toward Huntsville, where the black Kia Forte had reportedly been spotted. On the ground, the community rallied. Volunteers stapled flyers to telephone poles, church groups organized search parties, and parents walked shoulder to shoulder with deputies through wooded areas near Meerwoods Drive. The search grew into a network of thousands. Law enforcement, neighbors, and strangers bound by urgency. Each new tip added another dot to the investigative map. But more leads did not always mean more clarity. For investigators, one official explained, the challenge was connecting thousands of leads into one clear trail. As hours turned into days, the search effort stretched further across Texas. Every mile mattered, and every false lead risked precious time. Yet behind the overwhelming noise, a single path was slowly beginning to emerge, the one that could lead them straight to Skye. The turning point came from a machine, not a man. Automated license plate readers flagged the black 2024 Kia Forte South Carolina plates, 3117 BIA, heading north on Interstate 45. Within minutes, investigators cross-referenced the hit with fresh tips from the public. Several callers had reported a car matching the description in Huntsville. Suddenly, scattered leads converged into one undeniable trail. Deputies moved fast. They closed in on a quiet apartment complex, surrounding the parking lot. The suspect's car sat in plain sight, the same vehicle tied to Skye's disappearance. Officers approached with weapons drawn but measured, knowing one wrong move could put her at greater risk. The door opened. Inside, they found 16-year-old Skye Meiler frightened but alive. In that moment, the search that had consumed a state ended in relief. She had been missing for days, but against the odds she was safe. At the scene, Nathaniel Young was arrested without resistance. Investigators described him as calm, detached, while Skye was quickly moved into protective custody. News of her recovery traveled back to Spring in a rush of phone calls and breaking news alerts. Outside her family's home, the air shifted from fear to gratitude. Neighbors wept. Her parents clung to each other. For them, the words they had waited to hear were finally spoken. "We found her. She's coming home." But even in that moment of joy, investigators knew the hardest questions were still ahead. Who exactly was Nathaniel Young? And how had he managed to lure Skye away? At the Huntsville scene, 22-year-old Nathaniel Young was taken into custody without incident. Hours later, he was booked into the county jail, facing a single charge, harboring a runaway. In Texas, that charge carries the weight of a misdemeanor or, in some cases, a felony, depending on the circumstances. But in the eyes of many, it seemed like a faint response to a case that had triggered a statewide AmberAlert. Legal experts weighed in. Harboring a runaway covers the immediate facts. He kept a minor away from her family.
but prosecutors could pursue more if evidence shows coercion, intent, or exploitation. Courtroom visuals show Young in shackles, expression flat as the charge was read aloud. The proceedings were brief, but the questions surrounding them were not. Journalist commentary asks, but was harboring a runaway enough, or should prosecutors pursue more severe charges? In other cases across Texas and the nation, men accused of luring teens online have faced a spectrum of penalties, from online solicitation to trafficking charges. Some served years in prison, others walked with probation. The comparisons highlight the uncertainty. Without clear evidence of force, coercion, or abuse, prosecutors often rely on the narrowest statute available. Critics argue that the law lags behind the realities of digital grooming, leaving gaps that suspects can slip through. For Skye's family, relief at her safe return quickly gave way to frustration. To them, the arrest was just the beginning. The real fight would be for justice. Skye's rescue was a rare ending, one where a missing child came home alive. But across the country, the statistics tell a harsher truth. Each year, more than 300,000 children are reported missing in the United States. A growing number of those cases involve online grooming, where predators build trust through screens before making their move. Experts warn that technology companies bear responsibility. Platforms like Discord, TikTok, and Instagram give kids community, one analyst explains, but they also give predators direct access. Without stronger safeguards, the cycle will continue. Advocacy groups point to a disturbing pattern. As law enforcement scrambles to adapt, predators exploit the anonymity of the digital world faster than rules can keep up. For Skye, the nightmare ended with her safe return. But her story forces us to ask, how many others remain unseen, lost in the shadows of the digital age? If you have information about a missing child, call the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children at 1-800-843-5678. If you suspect a child is in danger, don't wait. Call 1-800-THE-LOST.